I am recording right now. All right. Good evening, everybody. This is Aaron Burr out of San Diego, California.
I'm Blake Lincoln from the snowy northlands of Minnesota.
And you guys are listening to the Free Thought Doctrine. It is November 7th, 2020, Saturday after the election. So obviously, the election went down. It took a few days. Uh, there were I would say, some obvious anomalies and irregularities. The press has already anointed Biden as president, but I think that Trump, well, he obviously is going to be taken to court, maybe, and hopefully he has hard evidence to fight this in the court and take it to the Supreme Court and mount a fight. You guys might have different opinions on that. That's how I see it. I do not think that was a 100% legitimate election. I know Blake, you're on the same lines as me, but how do you feel about how this whole mail-in ballot and everything was used in this election?
Well, for me, I think this has been the plan since almost the beginning of the year. I believe, ever since uh, coronavirus hit the United States, this has been the plan. They essentially weaponized the virus. They used COVID to go to the courts and change election laws in several states. And therefore, because of the national pandemic, where a lot of states were able to just change their laws so that mail-in ballots are were counted. And to me, that the Democrats, you have to hand it to them, they were way more prepared this go around. They were already in the courts in February and March trying to get election laws changed, and the Republicans really didn't do much about it. Trump said stuff on Twitter, he pointed it out that it was a bad idea, but nothing was really done about it. And so here we are.
Yes, totally agree. I mean, the fact of the matter is that the Democrats and the left, like you said, they weaponized the pandemic, right? They used it to change these election laws and processes, overriding these Republican state legislatures. If you look at Article 2 in the Constitution, only the state legislatures are the ones that can change, voting and election laws. But they went around that, right? The governors, the board of elections, the stuff in the states, they went around it, and they had these processes changed, while at the same time scaring the hell out of the public, right? And especially older people, right? Just freaking them out that how you can't go vote in person. Like I know you could go to the grocery store, but you want to die because you went and voted, to a election site. Like, so they scared him, right? And but my bigger problem is here though. My bigger issue is here that I just can't wrap my head of why this was allowed to happen is why did the Republicans and the Trump team not, mount a defensive? Why did they not get in there and fight these lawsuits? Why were there no counter lawsuits? Why were they not? Why were Republican legislatures and
Well,
not
yeah,
fighting this? Like they allowed the fact is when you have massive mail-in ballots. I'm not talking about absentee balloting. That's what I'm sick of people conflating the two, right? Because I do absentee balloting or voting or whatever, and you have to. It's a process. You have to prove where you're at. You prove who you
it's
are.
much more legitimate.
Much more legitimate, but there's a huge difference between that and doing a mass mail-in where you don't even contact the other party. You just look at the voter rolls, which are not up to date at all, and you just send out millions of ballots, is which will happen, right? And again, to me, it's obvious that you can have issues with that could cause a lot of these irregularities. But my bigger issue is why did the Republicans, right, not fight this? Like it
And
was. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Blake.
yeah, can I just, to your point there, when you said they should have been on the defensive, at that point they should have been on the offensive. They should have been proactive. As immediately when the coronavirus hit, people should have been preparing for this scenario. They should have been ready to fight this stuff in the courts from day one. And they shouldn't have been on the defensive. They should have been on the offensive. And they should have been proactive about protecting the integrity of our national election, because it's very concerning to me now, where you're going to have roughly about 50% of the country that doesn't think that that was a fair and transparent election, just like 50% of the country in 2016 felt, for very different reasons, but they felt the very same way. And so when you continue to have these issues, the divisiveness and questioning the integrity of our elections, that's not good for anybody. So I really think, yeah, to your larger point, this should have been handled months ago, and they really blew it, I think.
Well, I mean, totally agree. You're right. It should be offensive, and that is also my other issue with the Republicans and Trump, is the fact that we are always on the defensive. We're always like we on the right are always on the defensive from the left, always.
Except for Trump himself.
Trump himself has a personality. You're right. He does counterpunch, right? Oh, he'll punch in the first place, and then he'll counterpunch as needed. Sometimes people might argue some of those punches go in the wrong targets, I guess, or whatever. And that's some arguments people make. But my point is, also he never has any help. He's always by himself. He has no help from the Republican Party. He has no help from anybody in the media whatsoever, right? Like he's a one-man team. So really, this goes back to my criticisms of Trump, is the fact that, how do we even get here in the first place, right? And I think part of that is the fact that he didn't have the help, and B, and maybe because he didn't have the ability to or whatever, but he allowed these deep state people like Fauci, right? Like Fauci was out there part of this, like we were talking about the weaponization of the pandemic. Well, Fauci was the guy sitting there scaring everybody.
Oh, and like we said in our previous episode, we talked about that. They made a tremendous mistake giving him such a big platform. That was a huge error, I think, by the administration.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like his problem, right, has been these appointments, these, it's like, let's go back. So, okay, you could go back to Fauci, right? Like he was already part of the government, but like you said, why would he give this guy all this, give them a platform to basically speak out against him, right? Even though he's in his own government. But you can just go back further. I mean, we could break this wide open and start talking about the fact, like, why were certain arrests not made in the last 4 years?
Comey and the boys. Yeah, exactly. Whatever happened.
Exactly. You got Comey, Clapper, Brennan, McCabe. You got Hillary, right? All these people who are part of that deep state machine that were allowed to flourish, essentially, during the Trump administration. And I would argue, had he taken care of these things and drained the swamp, and I realize it's not that easy, but still, had he mounted that offense, and so not always on the defense, then maybe he wouldn't even be in this position in the first place.
And that goes, I think, my theory anyway, that goes way back to when he won the election. And this may or may not sound fair or unfair, but I'm still to this day not sure that Trump and his people actually expected to win. And I think it was a big a surprise to them as it was to everybody else. And so I just think a lot of it, when they were coming up with cabinet people, I really don't think they did their due diligence in picking good quality people, because you could go down the list of people that they brought into that administration that were just complete disasters.
Well, and he brought in the deep state.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is ironic because, it was all about he ran on, draining the swamp, but
Exactly.
really he brought the swamp in.
He
He
did.
flooded the Oval Office with the swamp.
He absolutely
Whether it
did.
was, I mean, his chief of staff, Priebus, uh, was a tremendous swamper. You had Tillerson. You had uh, what's his name from the Department of Defense, Mattis. You had man. I mean, the list goes on.
So, I mean,
Mnuchin. It just there is so many of them.
well, I
They
mean, let's go back over those again, though. Let's go back over those again. So you have Mnuchin, right, the Secretary of the Treasury, who is Goldman Sachs. Is that
oh
not the deep
yes.
state? Is Goldman Sachs not the deep
Yeah,
state?
well, yeah. If you do your research on Goldman Sachs, they definitely like to do business with government entities. I will say that much.
Yeah, let me go on. Let me go on. So you have, Mnuchin, deep state. You have, or he's Goldman Sachs, which is the deep state. You have Tillerson, which was Big Oil, which is the deep state. You
Yeah,
had, I think the Secretary of like transportation. I don't remember her name, but she's the wife of Mitch McConnell.
yeah,
Deep
Chow.
state. Yeah, deep state. You had
Betsy DeVos, the Department of Education.
deep
That's
state.
another bushy deep
Yeah,
state person.
exactly. So I know that I keep using the phrase deep state, but what do I mean when I say deep state? I mean the political elite. I mean the Republican and Democrat establishment that's already been in power for the last 80 years. The military industrial complex, the national state, the national security state apparatus. Right, they're all the same thing. The administrative state, the bureaucracy.
The
Right.
bureaucracy,
Yeah.
that's what I would say
Yeah.
on an easier level. It's
Yeah.
the bureaucracy, career government officials.
Career bureaucrats. Like that is
Yep.
when I'm saying deep state, that's what I'm talking about. Like Mattis was a deep state. He continued. I know a lot of people that in the military are probably going to disagree with me because I know he's very popular in the military. But to those of us who can step aside and kind of look at the whole thing, the guy was deep state. He was pro all the wars. He was pro all the interventionist wars, right? The endless wars that Trump wanted to stop. That's why he quit, because Trump wanted to pull troops out of Syria, and he couldn't have it, right? And if you look at a lot of these stories that came out about Trump, it was always when he was about to do something with the national defense in terms of these wars. Like he was going to try to pull troops out of Afghanistan, right? And that's when the very next day is when they had that BS story about him calling fallen troops in World War One losers or whatever. Like, even though there's 14 confirmed people that were there that said it never happened, and it was an anonymous source that was never proven, right? But
Yeah, I
that
wonder who
story,
that was.
but that story dropped literally the day. It was either the day before or day after he was about to make a major announcement about pulling out of Afghanistan. But it was
Right. Yeah.
overshadowed that now
Yeah.
he hated the military. It was a timed hit piece. You know what I'm
I
saying?
think the real divide with Trump and Mattis was, you remember when we launched that strike on Syria, the
Yeah,
missile,
yeah, I do.
in response, to what happened. I think Mattis wanted to go farther. I think the Pentagon wanted to go farther. They wanted to use it as an excuse to put even more American assets in that region, and I think they wanted to uh, expand that conflict. And I have to give Trump credit. That's one thing in 4 years we didn't enter any new scenarios anywhere.
Well, exactly. In fact, I'm pretty sure if you go back and look at the last several presidencies, he was the first one they didn't start a new war.
Isn't that
Right?
something? I
And the
mean,
thing,
how
and
incredible is that? Like,
it,
it's
but that's part of again, like, why did Trump, putting fraud aside, why did Trump lose the election? Well, part of it is the fact that he did not even communicate that. You know what I
no.
mean? Like he didn't even communicate the fact that he did not start any more endless
Yeah,
wars
well,
that has been started in the past.
and I would argue too, whether you like his Twitter habits or not, that was literally his only way of communicating to people, because the people in his own administration wouldn't even go to bat for him. He was literally defending himself and going going to bat for himself every day because there was
Absolutely.
really nobody else who had his back really until lately. There's been a few in the later stages of the administration, but really he was. I really believe he didn't know what he was getting himself into, and he was a man on an island in there, I think.
Well, definitely. I definitely feel that look at the first 2 years of his administration, which, again, I talked about last episode how I hate Republicans, and talk about another perfect example where it was a unified government at the time, right? You had Trump, the Senate, and the House all GOP, right? And what do they accomplish? Nothing.
Well, I mean,
Nothing.
yeah, our good old friend Paul Ryan made sure that absolutely nothing was accomplished in the House for 2 years. And
Including
if something were to squeak by, Mitch McConnell made sure that it died there in the Senate. It was
Yep.
that the Republicans did absolutely nothing with their majority.
Exactly. They had a full majority. You had Trump in office, right? And so many things that, from where I stand politically, could have been done that would have been great. Like we could have gotten, well, at the time there was an act to uh, allow suppressors for guns, right? It was the national like concert now I'm drawing a blank here, but it was about the Hearing Conversation Act, or Hearing Conversation Act, I believe was called Conservation Act. Jeez, I'm blanking out. So the Hearing Conservation Act, which would have allowed right now like suppressors, you have to like get a NFA stamp, you have to pay $200, you have to go through a process that could take up to months, if not years, and that was something that the Republicans really wanted to push when they had the majorities, or they had it. Did they do it? No. Or repeal the NFA Act itself, the National Firearms Act. Did that happen? No. And I could go down the line and talk about way more things that they had
You
the
could,
golden green opportunity to do it, and did they do it? No.
well, I mean, another issue you could talk about that the establishment Republicans really love and they'll probably bring back now is, I mean, the whole amnesty issue.
Oh yeah,
They, I mean,
that's on the table.
that's a just another issue where Trump and the Republican mainstream party just couldn't see eye to eye on anything. They definitely didn't support his America First policies in that regard, I don't think.
Exactly. Like, so you have those 2 years, which were completely squandered and wasted, right? Then you had the midterms, which brought in the blue wave, and to his credit, right, he actually got, he actually, here's the thing: is conservatives and the Republicans actually made massive gains on this election, right? They are seats within taking, or at least bringing the House to an even state, right? I think they're like five
Yep.
seats away from.
They
They didn't.
gained a lot of
Yeah,
ground.
they didn't lose any uh, incumbent seats that were up whatsoever, right?
Yeah.
And so, I guess the sad part is he probably was, in his second term, he was bringing in way more Republicans that were actually Trump supporters, and
And
he put, you know what I mean? So
I think that goes, I mean, we could probably talk about that in a later episode, but you know, what is Trump's legacy? And it's really fascinating to me because for all the talk of him being uh, a racist, a bigot, sexist, he brought more diversity to the Republican Party than any candidate could ever dream of.
he got more blacks, Hispanics, Asians, Muslims,
Everybody,
everybody.
women,
Yep.
it's even the Jewish vote was
Yeah, even Jew
ridiculous,
votes. Yeah.
ridiculously high for a Republican, and I think you know, if anything, a lot of Republicans got reelected this election cycle, and they can thank Trump for that 100% because he really is. He may not be the anchor, but he is really the buoy to what the Republican Party is now. And I I think it's great that there is more diversity in the party. It's much needed, and it's great to see just
Well,
uh,
but
people that it's not it's we need that kind of stuff in that party.
here's the thing: is you know, kind of bounce back for a second to our first topic or whatever was how did the Republicans pull in all these new voters, right? And down ballot votes for Congress, right? Where they made gains, but then the top of the ticket lost.
Yeah,
It's a
isn't
little. I'm
that
just.
it?
It's a
Doesn't
little
that make that
concerning.
makes so
It doesn't
much
make. It doesn't make
so
sense.
much sense?
It
Yeah,
doesn't make any
it's
sense at all because typically what it is you have the top of the ticket and then people will vote for the same, like say they vote for whatever Republican for president. I'm not trying to discredit the American people, but a lot of people don't even know like all those names at the bottom, right? They vote for the Republican or the
and they
Democrat,
usually go down
and
ballot.
then
They
and
don't
then they go
switch
down
between.
ballot. Exactly. They go, hey, I'm voting for the Democrat, and I'm voting for all the D's down ballot. Or I'm voting for Republican, and I'm voting for all the
Yeah,
R's. So if you think, well, Biden won, so then all the Democrats must have won too. But then that's not the case.
it
It,
just
it doesn't
like
make
you said at
sense.
the top of the program. It's awfully suspicious what's been going down, and that's just another point to that. Like, how is that even possible? It
Exactly.
it's very suspicious. Again, it'll play out through the courts. We'll see what happens, but that's a good point. Like, how is that even possible? I'd love to see. You know what? It was probably the Russians. I bet you it was the Russians. It's
Well,
always the Russians.
so here's 2 points on that. Is a the same the same people that were that said that Trump had a illegitimate election the first time around, that said his presidency was illegitimate, was was all because of Russian collusion, right? And that it was basically he was a Russian agent, and then at the very end of the day with the Mueller investigation, like, yeah, no proof whatsoever that that was the case, and no one's ever gone back or apologized for that, for the people that pushed that, right? But the same people that were pushing that, they can't turn around now and say, how dare we try to say that there was some kind of, mischief going on in this election. They can't say that because they pushed that for 3 years, and now there's some definite irregularities and anomalies going on, and you got to be consistent here. Is all I'm saying.
Oh,
Consistency.
it's funny, because they've talked for 4 years about how Trump was a puppet of Putin, right? For
Mm-hmm.
4 years we had to hear this, and then uh, even Putin himself, he came out and he said he was looking forward to working with Joe Biden because the Democratic Party has overlaps and things in common with the Communist Party. And to me, like, really, so this guy, we're supposed to believe this guy was in bed with Donald Trump? It seems quite perplexing that that could be the case when Putin would come out and make that kind of statement saying that he believes that Biden and the Democrats uh, fit right in with some ideals of communism. That should terrify everybody.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, the point is, if you really go back and look at the evidence, the only side that was, colluding with the Russians was actually the Democrats. Not if you go back and look at the evidence, it was the other way around. The uranium, the deals that Hillary Clinton was doing with, the different company, the deals that Biden was doing with certain companies in Russia. Like, they were really projecting what they were doing onto Trump. And really, if you were to go back and take a black and white objective look at it, that's what would reveal itself, right?
Right.
But the other thing too about the whole Russian collusion thing is going back to my other point, where the first 2 years, when the Republicans didn't do anything to help Trump, one reason why is because they bought that Russian collusion stuff hook, line, and sinker, right?
Oh
They
yeah.
bought it, and they were thinking that Trump would be, arrested and yanked out of the White House. So that's one reason they believed in a completely false, fabricated story, and that's one reason why they didn't work with him in the first place.
So
And
bottom line is, uh, establishment Republicans are really just born losers. They're trained to lose. They enjoy losing almost. It seems like they're just so used to it that they do it. They don't even have to. They don't fight. They don't even have to be told. They just do it.
they're
And it's
total wimps. Total
yeah.
wimps. Yeah.
They never fight. They never show any guts. I mean,
No,
it
that's
just
something
is
that
a sad state of affairs.
I mean, that's something that Trump brought to the table, right? Like he didn't back down. He wasn't playing Mr. Nice Guy. I mean, he was an a-hole, right?
Yep.
Like he gave it to him, like we
He
were talking about
ran
earlier.
he ran it like he would run his business. He ran the White House like a business almost, like he
Yeah,
was negotiating with a tough competitor.
exactly. And
That's
he knew how to troll and pick, at the left that drove him crazy. It drove
yep.
him crazy. But uh, but like you said, like the thing I despise about Republicans, and I'm seeing them now. I'm seeing them because they're all coming out of the woodworks now, right? They're all coming out now, showing their true colors, right? Like it's the middle of the road, the wishy-washy. Oh,
Yep.
I'm a gentleman with dignity and honor, and I'm not gonna say this or that about
Oh
them,
yeah.
and I'm gonna play Mr. Nice Guy, and I want to be friends, and I want everybody to like me, and like I'm a nice guy, and
They're
yeah,
worried
yeah,
they're worried
no,
about being liked. Meanwhile, the other side is worried about taking over the country.
exactly. So
So
while they're being put, so while these type Republicans are saying this, they're being walked on, they're being pushed over, and they're
yep.
being made to look as like fools, right?
Yep.
And
Oh
the thing
totally.
is, but then they turn around and they point at Trump, going, "He's the fool.
Yeah, because he's ruining it and
He's breaking the
he's
mold.
doing
He broke
his
the mold."
he's breaking the game. The
Exactly.
game is rigged and he was ruining the game. And that's the biggest thing about Trump is just again kind of what we talked about, just even the way things are ending here. It looks like he is exposed so many of these people on both
Exposure, big
sides,
time. Yeah.
on both sides of the aisle, that uh, that's really something we can take away from this, is just look at some of these people that he's exposed, and it's really quite sad that they've been allowed to stay in government for as long as they have.
Absolutely agree. He exposed the the rats, right, for what they are. He exposed them. Like the whole country can see it. And if they
Well,
can't,
like, yeah, go ahead. I
um,
was I
go
was
ahead, go
just gonna
ahead.
say with another example of that, where is with all this stuff going on, all these allegations of fraud. We're not going to really get into the meat and potatoes of that issue, but obviously it's contested in court. There's all these allegations. Where is William Barr and the DOJ? Absolutely quiet. I mean, if there's anybody who should be looking into uh, problems with an election, it should be the Department of Justice. Instead, he's quiet. The FBI is quiet. Almost every single Republican's quiet. It's like, with friends like these, who needs enemies?
Absolutely, absolutely true. Like the way I see it, right? And I kind of want to start wrapping it up, but the way I see it
Yeah.
is, you had first of all, I'll say that on my last podcast, I was incorrect when I said that I thought there was going to be a landslide. Obviously, there wasn't a landslide. And, for the reasons that we kind of touched on here, and we could touch on them again in the future. But in my opinion, is Trump did take on the establishment, right? At least in style. Definitely in certain policies he made and the way he negotiated. We talked about that before too, being an outsider. But he took on the establishment elite, the AKA the deep state, even though he ended up hiring a lot of these guys, maybe unknowingly. But for the most part, he stood against them. He stood against the Republican establishment, especially. And that's why they either actively mounted an offense against him or totally backed off when he needed their help. Right? And
No, they want to just go back to business as usual,
yeah, they want the status
unfortunately.
quo, which is
Yeah.
what's happened with Biden winning. The status quo returns.
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
So,
Everybody's making money again.
exactly, like business as usual. So,
And on
um,
that note, I guess we should probably wrap it up for the evening.
yes.
Anything
So
else to add?
no, that's all I got. Thanks everybody for listening. Obviously, we're a little bit fired up from the selection, if you can't tell, and
Yeah,
hopefully you got
just a little bit.
just a little bit. Hopefully you got something out of it. I appreciate you guys for listening. We'll have more episodes to come, and we touch a lot of things. We'll dive into these things more particularly in other episodes, as we feel and as we feel needs to be. That's all I got. You got any last minute things?
I guess for me, I just wanted to say, there's probably a lot of people that are feeling maybe, on the side of things that it didn't work out for them, the Trump supporter out there. And I just wanted to say that, you can't give up, you can't despair. A wise person told me that no matter what happens in any election, there is always a fight, win or lose. The fight continues. And that reminds me of a quote from the late Andrew Breitbart, who was another
Great man.
great man, another inspiration to me. And I want to just share a quote
Please.
with you to end the show here. He said, "Walk towards the fire. Don't worry what they call you. All those things are said against you because they want to stop you in your tracks. But if you keep going, you're sending a message to people who are rooting for you, who are agreeing with you. The message is that they can do it too." And so just, hang in there, everybody. If you're upset, just, there's always a fight. It's not all over. Life goes on. We'll continue to uh, plug away here, and maybe that's something we can talk about in another show, is where do we go from here?
Yes, I'd say our next show we'll talk about where we go from here. So with that, thank you everybody for listening, and you've been listening to the Free Thought Doctrine.